Have you ever felt invisible in your own home? That was the question racing through my mind the moment I overheard my daughter, Caroline, laughing with her sister, Lisa, just a week before Christmas. "Leave all 8 kids with her," Caroline said, her voice light and teasing. "We'll go relax at the resort." The words landed like ice water on my skin. 8 grandchildren. My hands shook as I gripped the kitchen counter, and suddenly, decades of devotion, the cooking, the cleaning, the endless mediating, felt invisible, meaningless. I am Margaret, though most people in my life call me Mom or Grandma, depending on the day. For over 40 years, my identity has been intertwined with others' needs. I raised 2 daughters with quiet dedication, managed a household with military precision, and now, in my widowhood, I've devoted myself entirely to my children and grandchildren. Holidays, birthdays, emergency babysitting, my life was an endless cycle of service. And yet, here I was, realizing that my sacrifice had made me almost invisible in the very family I had spent a lifetime nurturing. Caroline and Lisa grew up inseparable, sharing secrets, laughter, and plans I often thought included me. But today, their laughter excluded me, echoing with a cruel clarity. I remembered the first Christmas I had prepared for David's family, the anticipation of perfectly folded napkins, the delicate balance of spices in the roast, the careful arrangement of ornaments on the tree. I had believed that love was measured in service. But now, service felt like a chain. The kitchen smelled faintly of pine from the wreath I had hung the night before, a sweet reminder of tradition I had maintained alone. On the counter sat the $900 Christmas Eve dinner reservation confirmation and piles of gifts totaling $1,200, carefully selected and wrapped. I stared at them, feeling the weight of their futility. I realized then that I had a choice I had never allowed myself to consider: to step away from the relentless cycle, to prioritize my own peace. A quiet rage mingled with fear. Could I really abandon the familiar chaos, even for a few days? Could I risk their disappointment, their anger, their tears? And yet, for the first time, I felt a strange thrill imagining a Christmas without frantic cooking, spilled hot chocolate, or the unending tug-of-war between cousins. That night, I called my best friend, Paula, the only person who had ever reminded me that my happiness mattered. Her voice, warm and unwavering, anchored me. "Margaret," she said softly, "you deserve more than this." And for the first time in decades, I allowed myself to imagine a holiday that didn't revolve around invisible sacrifice, a holiday that might finally be about me. The next morning, the house felt unusually quiet, almost expectant. The usual clatter of breakfast dishes and the excited chatter of my grandchildren were absent, replaced by an unsettling calm. I wandered through the rooms, each one echoing with memories: Caroline's first steps by the staircase, Lisa's science fair triumphs, David's laughter lingering in the corners long after he was gone. These walls had witnessed my life of constant giving, and now they seemed to whisper that it was time for me to reclaim it. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the reservation confirmation and the neatly wrapped gifts. My mind raced. Could I really walk away from a lifetime of responsibility, even for a few days? And yet, the thought of enduring another holiday drowned in frantic chaos made my chest tighten. I realized that I had been holding my own joy hostage to the illusion of duty. For decades, I had equated love with sacrifice, and now I understood how little of myself I had preserved in the process. Paula called mid-morning, as if sensing the turmoil churning inside me. "Margaret," she said gently, "you don't have to do everything for everyone. You deserve a Christmas just for you." Her words, simple yet profound, cut through the fog of guilt I had carried for years. I breathed, imagining the ocean breeze, the warmth of the sun on my shoulders, the sound of waves replacing the endless bickering and cries of children. A flicker of possibility ignited in my chest. I started packing. Clothes, a journal, a few favorite books, small, deliberate reminders that I was reclaiming a life I had neglected. Each folded sweater, each carefully placed shoe felt like a declaration: I matter. My happiness matters. As I zipped the suitcase, a pang of fear shot through me. What if they never understood? What if the children felt abandoned? But alongside the fear, an unfamiliar exhilaration surged. I was no longer a ghost in my own home. By afternoon, I was ready. I left a note on the counter, simple and unadorned. I've gone to find some peace. Don't worry. I love you all, Mom. There was no apology, no justification, just truth. It felt both terrifying and liberating. Driving toward Paula's house, the familiar road seemed different, more alive, as though the world itself had shifted to accommodate this newfound courage. With every mile, the weight of decades lifted slightly, replaced by a sense of possibility. I was stepping into a life that I had never allowed myself to imagine. When I arrived, Paula was waiting with a grin that spoke volumes. "Ready for your first holiday that's really yours?" she asked. I nodded, feeling the tension in my shoulders dissolve. And in that moment, as the sun dipped low behind the trees, I realized that leaving wasn't abandoning my family, it was reclaiming myself. The journey had begun, and for the first time in 40 years, the Christmas ahead belonged entirely to me. The first night at the beach house, I lay in bed listening to the waves crash against the shore, a sound so different from the constant chaos I had left behind. For the first time in decades, my thoughts were entirely my own. Yet, even as the ocean soothed me, guilt and doubt crept in like shadows at the edges of my mind. Did I do the right thing? I wondered. Will they ever forgive me? The phone buzzed relentlessly. Caroline first. Her texts grew more frantic with each passing hour.
Mom.
You can't just leave us like this. What about the kids? Lisa followed with similar desperation.
I didn't reply.
Every message I ignored felt like a small rebellion, a reaffirmation that this time, my choices were my own. Paula noticed my hesitation and placed a comforting hand on mine. "You're allowed to put yourself first," she said softly. Her words were an anchor, keeping me grounded when panic threatened to surge. The days unfolded with a strange, liberating rhythm. We walked along the shoreline at sunrise, feeling the sand shift beneath our feet, and laughed until our cheeks hurt over terrible boardwalk games. I read a book without interruption, drank coffee while watching the horizon, and napped without guilt. Each moment was a stark contrast to the life I had left behind, and yet, my mind constantly replayed the life waiting at home. The 8 grandchildren, the mountain of presents, the holiday meals that would go unwatched and unappreciated. One afternoon, I finally answered Caroline's call. Her voice wavered between anger and fear. "Mom, please, the kids, they're asking for you. How could you leave?" I inhaled slowly, feeling the tension coiled tightly in my chest. "Caroline," I said quietly but firmly, "I needed this. I needed to breathe, to remember who I am outside of everyone else. I love you all, but I have spent decades disappearing behind what you needed. This time, I need something for me." There was silence on the other end. I imagined her sitting amidst the chaos of 8 children, the echoes of toys clashing against the walls, the frustration of trying to manage a family alone. And in that silence, I realized my absence was a lesson. It was painful, yes, but necessary. That evening, Paula and I sat on the balcony, sipping wine as the sun bled across the sky. "It's strange," I admitted, "how quiet it is, yet how full I feel." She nodded, smiling. "You've been invisible for too long. Now they see what happens when you choose yourself." For the first time, I wasn't just living, I was existing on my own terms, discovering the rhythm of my own heart. And yet, the tension lingered, a silent undercurrent reminding me that returning to the family I loved would require navigating guilt, confrontation, and emotions I hadn't faced in decades. The storm was not over. It had only shifted. As I watched the waves roll endlessly toward the shore, I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. I was learning what it meant to choose myself, and I knew that when I returned, nothing would be the same. Christmas Eve arrived with a fiery sunset, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet, a stark contrast to the chaos I had left behind. I stood barefoot on the sand, letting the cool waves lap at my ankles, and felt a sense of clarity I had not known in decades. The truth I had been avoiding crystallized in my mind. I had spent 40 years living for everyone else, losing myself piece by piece in the process. And now, for the first time, I understood that my absence was not abandonment, it was reclamation. The phone buzzed again. This time it was a video call from Caroline. Her eyes, red-rimmed and brimming with frustration, searched mine across the distance. "Mom, how can you just," she began, her voice shaking, "leave us like this on Christmas?" I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I let the sound of the ocean fill the silence between us. I wanted her to hear what I had finally discovered: the power of boundaries, the importance of choosing peace over duty. "I needed this," I said at last, my voice steady, almost gentle. "I needed to breathe, to remember who I am outside of being a mother, a grandmother, a caretaker. I love you all, but I have spent decades disappearing behind what you needed. This time, I had to choose me." Her face softened slightly, though the tension in her posture remained. I could hear the chaos of toys, spilled cocoa, and squabbling children behind her. It was the life I had known for years, the life that had nearly erased me. And yet, as I spoke my truth, I realized that my fear of their anger had been smaller than the weight I carried for myself. Paula, sitting beside me, squeezed my hand, and I felt the last remnants of doubt wash away with the tide. I looked out at the horizon and understood that my identity was no longer tethered solely to my family's happiness. I was more than the sum of the meals I prepared, the gifts I wrapped, the tears I soothed. I was a woman capable of claiming her own joy, her own peace. For the first time, I laughed freely, letting the sound mingle with the roar of the waves. It was a laugh of relief, of recognition, of liberation. The lesson I had feared delivering to my family had already been learned. That love, when genuine, can exist alongside self-respect and personal boundaries. As night fell and the stars blinked into existence above the darkened ocean, I felt a profound shift within me. I wasn't the same woman who had driven away that morning, trembling with fear and guilt. I was someone reborn, someone who had discovered that the courage to say enough was the most powerful act of love, not just for myself, but for everyone who relied on me. That Christmas Eve, I watched the world around me, not the chaos I had left behind, and realized I had finally found something I had long forgotten: myself. When I returned home a week later, the house smelled of lingering pine and melted snow, a familiar scent that once brought comfort, but now felt different, lighter, somehow. The rooms were messy, as expected, toys scattered across the floor, wrappers crumpled and forgotten, a faint trace of cocoa on the kitchen counter. And yet, despite the disorder, I felt an inner peace I hadn't known in decades. Caroline and Lisa were waiting, their expressions a mix of relief, anger, and something else, hesitation, perhaps even understanding. Their voices wavered between reprimand and apology, the lines of guilt faintly etched across their faces. "Mom, we didn't know how to handle it," Caroline admitted, her tone softening. I nodded, seeing in their eyes the reflection of my own growth, the recognition that love need not equal endless sacrifice, that boundaries could coexist with care. The grandchildren rushed to me, demanding attention, hugs, and stories of my week away. I laughed, enveloping them in my arms, feeling their excitement, but no longer losing myself in it. For the first time, I could give love without surrendering my identity. I realized that my absence had changed not just me, but them too. They had felt my value, understood the weight I carried, and glimpsed the importance of presence defined by choice, not obligation. Over the following days, I maintained small pockets of autonomy: a quiet morning walk, a cup of tea uninterrupted by requests or complaints, and afternoons spent journaling without interruption. My family adjusted slowly, the chaos no less frequent, but their awareness had shifted. I had set a precedent. My needs were legitimate, my happiness was essential, and my love was stronger for the boundaries I upheld. Sitting by the window one evening, watching the first snowflakes of winter drift lazily to the ground, I felt a profound sense of completion. I had walked away from duty, embraced fear, and returned transformed. The holiday I had once dreaded, the family I had once served endlessly, now existed alongside a new version of myself, one who could love fiercely, yes, but also fiercely protect her own joy. And in that quiet moment, I understood a truth I had long ignored. Self-respect is not selfishness, and peace is not a reward. It is a right. I had spent decades giving pieces of myself to others, but now I had found the courage to reclaim the whole. Christmas had passed, but its lesson lingered. I was no longer invisible. I was Margaret, mother, grandmother, and most importantly, a woman who had finally learned to choose herself. And in that choice, I discovered a freedom I had never imagined possible, a freedom that would guide every day thereafter.